This video is brought to you by Squarespace, the best all-in-one platform for all of your website building needs. Hey guys, it's Celestia, and I noticed something kind of weird recently. As some of you might recall, some of my latest episodes of Art Trope Top 10s were about the best and worst Mary Sue art tropes, and they did remarkably better than almost any of the other videos in the series. That in and of itself was a surprise. But what was more of a surprise was the sheer volume of oddly defensive comments along the lines of, "Oh, thank God my OC doesn't have any of these traits," or, "Well, my OC does have these traits, but it's okay because," or, "Thank you so much for warning me about these tropes so I can make sure none of my OCs have them." And like, okay, to a degree, that makes sense. Most of those videos get comments from people defending their favorite characters for having traits that I make fun of in them. So it would naturally follow that that would also be the case for their own characters. But these ones were just so much more, I don't know, vulnerable, maybe? Like, it wasn't just defending them out of passion, it was out of insecurity. And that was the surprising part, that people seemed to be watching less to be entertained by a silly, dumb joke video, and more out of a legitimate and completely serious desire to make sure their own characters didn't have the bad traits, or find reassurance in the traits that they did have being listed as good. And it got me thinking. I'd always noticed that videos talking about how to make a good OC, how to improve your existing OCs, what not to do when making an OC, and so on, were really popular. I had assumed that was just because of the popularity of OCs. I mean, almost everyone has at least one, so there's an exceptionally wide appeal. And out of sheer love and passion for those OCs, people are also naturally going to want any advice they can get out of a genuine desire to improve them, which those videos do an excellent job of offering. But this made me wonder, is it partially out of insecurity too? Are those videos that popular because artists are that afraid of making a quote-unquote bad OC that becomes the source of mockery, to the point that they'll watch anything that could possibly give them more information on avoiding that? And more importantly, why? Why is there such an inordinate, disproportionate amount of hate for OCs in online spaces that artists are left with this much fear and anxiety, when almost everyone has their own? Obviously, some of it comes down to cringe culture, something I've already made its own video about. Not all OCs are based on some kind of existing media, but a lot of them are, and it's become stupidly normalized to view caring about that media enough to create your own character based on it as cringe and embarrassing. God forbid they're a self-insert or a Mary Sue too, because that's just gonna get you sent right to internet jail. And OCs as a whole definitely do suffer just by being associated with them, to the point that some people even just assume every OC is a self-insert or a Mary Sue by default. I'm very sure that's responsible for a significant amount of the hate that they face online, but it's so intense, unrelenting, and deeply ingrained that there has to be more to it than just that. So I wanted to dig deeper, because it seems like almost every artist out there designing and drawing their OCs struggles with at least some degree of fear, and I thought maybe in unpacking the source a little more, it might help them let go of that, at least a little bit. I don't know if it actually will, but I still find the whole thing so interesting that I couldn't stop myself from making a video about it anyway. So here we are. Let's talk about why people hate OCs so much that a lot of artists are constantly battling insecurity about their own. But first, let me take a moment to thank today's sponsor, Squarespace, a longtime partner of the channel. If you've been watching my videos for a while, you know them. I haven't shut up about them in what feels like several decades, and ramble about them so often that I've been told on multiple occasions that it isn't a Duchess Celestia video without a Squarespace segment. And good, I agree, it isn't, because I genuinely love them. I think they're hands down the best website building and hosting platform out there, and that makes them a huge asset to any artist. If you're looking to get any kind of art-based work, be it in the industry or just some freelance commissions on the side, you need a professional-looking portfolio that's not just gonna make your art shine, but show that you take your trade seriously. And there's no better place to build one than on Squarespace. I made both my previous branded, cutesy portfolio and my new, revamped, more professional version there. And even though they're very different, the tools they offer made building both of them equally easy. And not only are they a godsend for portfolio building, they have a massive library of templates that will have exceptional options for any kind of site that you could possibly need. And if the site you need happens to be an online store, you're in luck, because they offer all of the tools that you need to turn it into one. The ability to manage payments and inventory, handle shipping and fulfillment, and even boost your SEO to help get more eyes on your site and maximize the number of customers shopping there. It's perfect for selling merch, prints, and really any kind of physical goods, but selling services like consultations, event management, editing, and even art commissions is just as easy with everything Squarespace has to offer. A streamlined workflow, built-in appointment scheduling, email marketing tools, and so much more. And your customers have just as many options as you do too, because they offer all of the most popular payment methods like Klarna, ACH Direct Debit, Apple Pay, Afterpay, and ClearPay, and even allow you the option to send individualized branded invoices to specific clients, so you can start accepting orders from all around the world with just a few clicks. Whether you're an artist in need of a portfolio, an entrepreneur building an online store, a creator setting up an interactive blog, or a small business owner making a landing page, Squarespace is the place to do it. And you can find out yourself by going to squarespace.com to get your own free trial today. And once you've built the perfect site that you're ready to launch, you can get 10% off your first purchase of a website website or domain by going to squarespace.com/DuchessCelestia, linked in the description. Thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video, and please go check them out. Now, let's get back to OCs, or original characters. Technically speaking, every character everywhere is an original character of someone's. The entire cast of your favorite show is made up of its creators' OCs. In online spaces, though, the term has kind of adopted a definition of its own that doesn't include them. If the character is in anything considered to be remotely professional, created by a team or a studio, they don't count as an OC to most people who use the term. It applies almost exclusively to characters created by singular individuals, and while it's most often used to describe characters based on existing media, it doesn't exclude those that are completely original to their creator and aren't any kind of fan creation. And like I said, almost everyone has at least one. Maybe you haven't gone so far as to properly design them or make or commission art of them, but if you're honestly telling me you've never imagined a character in your head and fleshed out who they are to at least some degree, I don't believe you. So for something that's so universal to be the subject of this much hate, it has to be because of something more than just the association with self-inserts and Mary Sues and cringe culture. In writing, or more specifically fanfiction, that association definitely does play more of a role. There are a lot of OCs that are injected into an existing world in a very forced way that then restructures it to fit them, making them the primary focus of the narrative when it doesn't make any realistic sense for them to be. When that's paired with them being overpowered and earning the instant affection of every canon character, it doesn't not make sense that people find it unappealing. People read fanfiction because they love the canon world and characters and want to see more of them. So content that shifts focus away from them or changes them in a way that challenges believability is naturally going to be the subject of scrutiny. But number one, not every piece of writing involving an OC is guilty of doing this, and number two, that doesn't really apply to visual art, where that hate is still just as present. To a degree, I suppose the principle does still apply. I hyperfixate on media that I love to the point that for the duration of my hyperfixation, all I draw is fan art of it. So there have been long periods of time where every piece of art I made was Bungo Stray Dogs fan art, for example. And during those periods of time, whenever I would draw anything that wasn't BSD fan art, I'd get comments essentially saying, "I follow you to see BSD fan art, not this." The same applies to OCs. If you draw a lot of fan art of your favorite piece of media and you have an OC for that piece of media that you also draw, that OC tends to be viewed less favorably simply because they're not what people want to see you draw. There are some people that will follow you because they like you and your art in general, and maybe even your OCs, and some people that will only follow you because they're interested in the subject matter of your art, and that's usually because that subject matter includes their favorite characters. When you draw your OCs instead, the latter will be alienated, because to them, those OCs are now taking attention away from the canon characters that they want you to draw. Any art that you make of your own character is art that you could have made of their favorite canon characters that they would rather see, and your character is viewed with resentment as a result. And to clarify, I don't think it's fair to blame people for not being as interested in art of your OC as they are in art of canon characters. If you make character-focused art, who the character is naturally going to play a huge part in its appeal. And for people to be interested in it beyond the appeal of the style that the character is drawn in, they have to have an attachment to the character. That already exists for canon characters. It doesn't for your OC, unless they've been following you and your art for long enough to develop it. The issue only arises when a lack of interest in OC art turns into hate towards it. And the problem is that that happens kind of gradually, so much so that it's easy to not even notice. It goes from, damn, I was hoping they'd draw my favorite character again instead of their OC, to, oh my god, more art of their OC, to, I'm so sick of OC art, until they haven't just lost interest in your art, they've developed a disdain towards both your OCs and OCs as a whole. That obviously isn't the case for everyone, and it certainly isn't enough on its own to be the source of this problem. It's kind of like ads, actually, as a concept. You're watching a show because you're interested in the show, and you put up with the ads as a necessary evil because they fund the show, but you get sick of them interrupting the thing you're actually there to watch, and your disinterest in what they're talking about turns into disdain towards it. Not because what they're advertising is bad, but because they're advertising it when you don't want to hear about it and it's not what you're there for. I've been guilty of this myself, not buying a product that I want and is actually good because I'm so sick of hearing ads for it that it's inherently associated with irritation to such a degree that I refuse to support it out of spite. It's childish as hell, and I'm working on not doing it, but I do it. And I think this is kind of a similar concept. If you draw canon characters and your OCs from the canon characters world, viewers of that art are likely to view the art of the canon characters as the show they're there to watch, and the art of your OCs as the ads interrupting it. It doesn't matter how good the product they're advertising is, or in this case, how good your OC is. They're gonna resent it just for interrupting the thing they were originally interested in. Occasionally, some of them will see the ad and think, okay, that actually sounds cool, and then develop an interest in the product independent from their interest in the show they were watching. And those are the people that start actually enjoying your OC art because they started to genuinely like your OC. But at least in most cases, they're the minority. This comparison brings about another factor that might contribute to OC hate, and that's repetitiveness. People love their OCs. They're creations born of passion that you pour a lot of yourself and your love into making. And for a lot of people, it brings them comfort to draw them. So naturally, they're gonna draw them a lot in many cases, to the point that they're sometimes one of the only subjects artists draw. Just like an ad that plays too often and sparks unearned annoyance towards the product being advertised in the process, some people just get sick of OC art based on the frequency with which artists produce it compared to other subject matter, developing a distaste for the OC that's less to do with the character and more to do with overexposure. And while we're still on the topic of OCs suffering from being compared to canon characters, let's talk about the unfair standards they face, because gatekeeping of fandom plays a big role here too. The more people love a piece of media, the higher their standards are for anything associated with it. If you really adore a show to the point that it's like your whole life, you're liable to become so attached to the way that it currently is that you're even resistant to new canon characters being introduced and threatening to disturb the narrative ecosystem that you're used to. And those are canon characters. OCs made by randos online daring to suggest that they could be a part of your perfect, beloved fictional universe? They're gonna have to be really damn good if they want that pass. In fact, they're gonna have to face higher standards than canon characters do more often than not, because OCs get criticized for possessing traits that a canon character themselves shares but gets absolutely no hate for because they're everyone's favorite little guy. A canon character could have wings for absolutely no justifiable reason and face no scrutiny for that. And an OC based in the same world who also has wings would be eaten alive for it. But all of this really only applies to OCs based on canon material. OCs that are completely original still face the same or at least a similar amount of hate, and all of this does little to explain that. Your OC taking attention away from canon characters or being viewed as inferior to them can only be a point of contention if there are canon characters to take attention away from or be inferior to. If you don't draw fan art of canon characters or your OC is just completely original, you wouldn't get hate for drawing that OC if that were the only or even primary reason for it. But we all know that's not the case, so there's gotta be more to it. Part of it, I think, is a perceived lack of quality. OCs are associated with amateurs. Like I said in the beginning, technically speaking, every character ever is someone's OC, but the term only applies to characters created entirely by individuals in a non-professional setting, because there's an inherent association between the term original character and inexpertise. Like they're a DIY handmade purse compared to the Valentino white bag you just spilled lipstick in, the latter obviously being both an incredibly outdated reference and, in this instance, the more polished and high-quality characters featured in popular media. If I told you to just imagine a random OC, more often than not, you'd probably imagine a bad one instinctively, either poorly designed or over-designed because they're made by just some inexperienced amateur dude who doesn't know shit about character design, which is obviously a baseless, often inaccurate assumption, because I've seen plenty of OCs made by individuals that are so well designed that they're absolutely on par with characters created in a professional setting. But despite the fact that we're living in an age where self-education is so lucrative and readily available that being self-taught at anything can easily mean you're as capable as someone with formal education in it, being self-taught is still associated with inferiority, and OCs are essentially an extension of that. They're immediately viewed as being lower quality because of the assumption that their creator is untrained in character design, no matter how good their creator actually is at it regardless of formal training. They're bargain bin characters. None of this, though, feels to me like the root cause of the hate for OCs. Contributing factors that worsen the problem, sure, but not the source of it. And the source, or at least the one that I suspect, brings us full circle: insecurity. The same thing that motivates us to fear our OCs getting hate is what I believe also motivates the hate towards them as a whole. Like I said, everyone has OCs. Everyone imagines characters either actively or passively, developing them in the process and growing to genuinely care about them. And if you care about your OC, you want to draw them and bring them to life and share them with the world. You want to be able to express your passion for them. But most people who spend a significant amount of time online are aware of how much hate, criticism, unfavorable comparison, and overall disdain OCs are met with when they are shared, at least outside of their creators' supportive communities and friends. Even if most of us view that as unfair and baseless, that doesn't make it less present. A fact that leads to a lot of people being too scared to draw their own OCs and share them with an audience that's liable, if not likely, to shit on them. So they don't. And that sucks, and they hate it, and it leaves them feeling creatively unfulfilled and stifled. So when they look at other artists who do make and share their OCs, it makes sense that resentment would be their instinctive response. It's not warranted or fair, but emotions rarely are. They see them sharing their most vulnerable creations with the world in a way that they themselves want to, but don't have the courage to. And envy turns into anger and disdain. They're so afraid of being mocked that they mock instead. Repressed love for their own OCs turns into hatred towards OCs in general, because every piece of art they see of them is a piece of art they wish they could have made, which only perpetuates the cycle that made them too afraid to. That, combined with the prevalence of cringe culture, and OCs falling into the category of cringe by default at this point, has resulted in it becoming socially acceptable to mock them. It's normal. Everyone does it, so it's harmless fun that people don't think twice about participating participating in. It might even make them feel better, because participating in the mockery means not only being free from facing it themselves, but also having their choice not to create and enjoy their own OCs validated as warranted and right, like how doomsday preppers almost seem to want the world to end just so that their extensive sacrifices and efforts to prepare for it won't have been in vain, to make a really dramatic comparison. So really, I guess it's no surprise that artists watched my videos about Mary Sue tropes to make sure their own OCs didn't possess any of those traits, rather than to be entertained. Publicly having an OC that you draw regularly is like walking on ice. You can't risk taking too heavy of a step and breaking it. You can't risk them having a trait that's associated with mockery when they're already so likely to be mocked as a result of the culture surrounding original characters as a whole. Of course, we've become obsessed with making sure our OCs are as good as they possibly can be to the point of insecurity. We're constantly surrounded by the hate that results from failing to. And now that we're at the conclusion of this video, there are two ways this could go. If you agree with my opinions on why OCs get so much undeserved and disproportionate hate, you could use that to inform that security. You could double down on making sure your own characters aren't liable to trigger any of these sources of anger. You could make extra sure that you don't draw them too often to incur irritation by way of repetition. You could draw canon characters more often so that your OCs don't steal attention away from them and piss off people that aren't there for them. You could make sure they're so well designed that they don't come off as amateurish at all. And I would get that, and I'm not saying you'd be wrong to, but that's not the message I want to send or the advice that I want to give. These are the things that I think motivate people to direct so much hate towards OCs, but I don't think avoiding their hate is worthwhile. I don't even think it's possible. I broke them down here because I think that hate is misguided and fundamentally baseless and not indicative of anything wrong with OCs, but very indicative of something wrong with how they're treated. What I really want the takeaway to be is that the hate is background noise not worth listening to. And what you should really double down on is ignoring it and drawing the hell out of your OCs anyway. Because if they get hate, the hate isn't really towards them at all. Obviously, constructive criticism designed to improve them is something else entirely, but that's not what I'm talking about. Ultimately, for a lot of artists, drawing our own characters is what got us into art to begin with, and the love we feel for them is so much stronger and more important than any hate the internet decides to throw at them. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. Special thank you as always to channel members Joseph Solomon, TC Pratt, Hierarchy Saluzzo, Peachy, King Good James, Art of Amethyst Fable, Extinction Animation, Andy the Hedgehog, Kai the Memer, Jazz, Just Sayori, Stardust, Hailstorm, and Darkholder, as well as patrons Batman, Kyle Lowe, Jamisha Walker, Kim Yin, Crazy Asar, Gentong, Grayson Xavier, Blah Mage, TC Pratt, Finn, Celine Merriman, Eldritchia, The Stray Dog, Ulura, Greg Noble, Decagon, Jenny Chan, Catbus, Lucia Majiki, Selena Bibi, Pride A, Totally Shogun, Insomniac Sleep Schedule, Wing Tang Wong, Marie Greer, Potato, Jazz, Voidwalker, Latte Tabby, Christian Cook, Adam Surovietz, Doriaki, Varius, Hailstorm, Emo Queen Jules, Lord Darkholder, Show, That's It, Craig, and Stardust, and I'll see you in the next one.